I think the most important part when it comes to the value proposition is what appears on screen immediately. So we're looking above the fold on the home page. As consumers, we do the tab test, right? So if we're looking for a service or a product and whatever immediately resonates with us will stay on there and linger. And ones that don't speak to us at all, we don't even pay them attention, we close that tab. The most important part when it comes to the value proposition is what does your messaging look like above the fold on your homepage? And does that messaging talk directly to the consumer's pain point and how you can help guide them through that problem that they're experiencing?
In this episode, we will be talking about a framework you can use to literally double the conversion rates on your website. My name is Moby Siddiq and I'm joined by my co-host, Linda. Hey, Linda, how are you today?
Hey, Mobs, I'm good. How you doing?
Good. So let's talk about, conversion rates and why this is even a thing before we get into the actual framework of it.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it, Mobs? I think we've worked with a lot of businesses at this point, and it's not typically something that businesses realize that they need to work on. They often come to us for a different problem.
Lead problem.
That's it. Yeah. Traffic problem. And it's typically something that we end up guiding a client on. It's an interesting one. We've worked with a lot of different clients before in terms of conversion rate optimization. And there is a framework that we will refer to today that we typically use. But as you guys will see, it really is just an anchoring of a framework. And there's a lot of things that you guys will take out today where you'll be able to look at your website and easily implement a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it happens. We were talking about this before the show so many times. Like one example comes to mind where a client's like, hey, we need more leads. And for their niche, they were getting 10,000 visitors per month, which was a lot. And we're like, guys, you don't have a lead problem. Your website's converting at 1%. And this is the thing. I'm going to say it's an average, but the average is like not the thing you should be happy about. Like the average is 2 to 3%. So if you're getting that, don't pat yourself on the back. You need to do better. Like that's the average of good websites, bad websites, whatever, right? But at least if you're not getting 2 to 3, it's the benchmark to go to. So guys, you need to get this a lot higher. And we did get it higher. And another example I'm thinking of, we got it from 2 to 4%. And that doesn't seem like a lot, but that's double the conversion rate. And for them, if you're getting thousands of visitors, that can mean a huge difference in terms of leads that you get. So let's get straight into, unless you want to add anything else to that, let's get into the framework.
Yeah, I think a lot of businesses will focus on all the different sources that are actually directing traffic to a website without actually looking at the website and thinking, okay, what's going to be the biggest bang for buck? It's not necessarily focusing on your Google ads and focusing on new articles. If you're bringing all that traffic to a website that is already converting poorly, you're going to get more bang for buck focusing on what you already have, which is your existing users that are already coming to your website, that are already finding you month in and month out, and optimizing the thing that we often refer to as your best salesperson.
Yeah, we're not saying that's you don't focus on that. Of course, focus on that. But you're saying, Linda, it's something clients don't think about.
Yeah.
It's like having a knife without having the fork. You need to get the traffic there too. But me and my metaphors, right? Like knife and fork. The other one I've been saying for years is, you can get ads and SEO can make the, ads and SEO can get the horses to the water, but CRO makes them drink.
Yeah.
So
anyway. And his analogies. All right, let's get started. So we'll talk through the framework today, and I'm going to be referring to my screen, but I mentioned the LIFT framework earlier. So with this framework, there's a value proposition, and it kind of, think about a plane and the value proposition kind of sitting in the middle of that. The value proposition is really the mental equation that goes on in a prospect's head when they're deciding whether they want to purchase from you or not. And so your website will have perceived benefits. And basically the perceived benefits have to outweigh the perceived costs. That's the idea here.
Yep.
That means that they're most likely to take an action.
You did mention it, but just in case it went over a bit quickly for everyone, it's called LIFT, right? So the framework is LIFT framework. And again, if you're watching the video version, you can see it on screen. I'm sure you've already seen it. And if you want to check that out, you can go to redpandas.com.au/EP174. But it's essentially like a plane, right? The model is a plane, lift, and then in the middle, it's a value proposition. So do you have any examples of that or anything come to mind? Because it probably is one of the most important ones that I think is hard for people to understand.
The value proposition in itself?
Yeah.
I think the most important part of the website, and you tell me if you think otherwise, but I think the most important part when it comes to the value proposition is what appears on screen immediately. So we're looking above the fold on the homepage, because as we know, as consumers, we do the tab test, right? So if we're looking for a service or a product, we'll typically right-click a few different websites, and then we'll go through those tabs. And whatever immediately resonates with us, will stay on there and linger. And ones that don't speak to us at all, we don't even pay them attention. We close that tab.
Yeah.
So I think the most important part when it comes to the value proposition is, what does your messaging look like above the fold on your homepage? And does that messaging talk directly to the consumer's pain point and how you can help guide them through that problem that they're experiencing? And then how well does that section above the fold guide them to take the next step? Because that's really the goal of a above the fold homepage. It's to speak directly to the consumer, and it's also to get them to take the next step.
I would add to that, definitely above the fold is core, but it's the whole page too. So like to add to that, I 100% agree, but don't just think it is just the above the fold. It should resonate through the whole page, but you're right in terms of like, that's the first thing that needs to attack the value proposition. We've spoken on this podcast a lot about StoryBrand, so we won't go into detail today, but we will link it in the show notes. Again, redpandas.com.au/EP174. And StoryBrand is great at value prop, right, Linda? Because it's like talking to a persona. I was talking to a prospect today, and he's like, our website's terrible. It's not talking to anyone. StoryBrand would solve their problem. Hey, persona, this is your problem. Like, there's a difference in saying like, hey, you're an accounting firm versus, hey, we're an accounting firm for marketing agencies that are, 20 to 30 sized in Australia. Like, they do the exact same thing, but like, oh, it's a marketing firm for marketing agents. Sorry, it's an accounting firm for marketing agencies. They know my problems. They know my challenges. It's so much easier to talk to someone.
Yeah.
But yeah, cool. All right, we'll definitely link that. And then let's move on to the next factor. What's the next one?
Okay. All right. So you've got five factors there.
These aren't in any particular order, right? Like, value prop is obviously probably the one that is in order, but the rest aren't really necessarily in order.
That's right. Yeah. Yeah. These are different points now, which you can kind of objectively look at your website and see how well you're doing against them. So another one is urgency. So urgency is, how are you matching the visitor's internal urgency and creating external incentives? So there's two types of urgency that people will sometimes experience when they're on a website. There's an internal urgency, which is basically like, we've got Christmas coming up. So it's like, oh my God, I'm late on Christmas presents and it's December 21st. That's an internal urgency that they're feeling in that moment. Whereas an external urgency is like someone giving you a really good offer that you feel like you need to take advantage of, even though you may not need that service or product right now.
Right.
So how are you capitalizing on different urgencies that people are feeling?
Right.
It's an interesting one because you can almost go too far and you can distract.
A lot of people have overdone it. Limited time offer and countdowns.
That's it. Yeah. And if it's on the wrong page and it's done at the wrong time or too soon when someone lands on the page, that's where it can actually do the reverse of what you're trying to do.
Yeah. They do work though. That's the thing. They do work. Like, even pop-ups, I know people don't like them, but they do work. The key thing I want to make here, because I think most people understand urgency and whatnot, but it's not just like the type of urgency that's very easy to understand is on landing pages and offers. But even on a homepage too, right? There's another type of urgency. Like, for example, if you're using StoryBrand principles, then you're going to talk to, hey, do you suffer with boom, boom, boom? Now, obviously on service pages, you might ramp up the urgency as opposed to homepage, but you can still have some urgency. You can be like, how long are you willing to suffer? Or how long are you willing to tolerate a slow agency, bad service, mediocre results? You're still trying to add a sense of urgency there. So it doesn't have to be the hard sell.
Yeah. I like that. Yeah, cool. Yeah. All right, beautiful. So that's urgency. Then we've got relevance as another factor. So essentially, was this what they expected to see? A really recent example I think I can give here is, and we can go kind of back to above the fold on the homepage. So your call to action buttons is a really good example. So you may feel tempted to come up with these really like marketing type crafty messages that make a lot of sense to you and look really great and will impress, the owner of the company. But do they make sense to the person? And when they're clicking on it is where they're going, where they expect to go.
Yeah, clear over clever. I've heard that.
Yeah.
Don't try to be clever. Just be clear. It's always going to be being clever.
Yeah. And a really good way you can see that is have a look at the clicks in your analytics. Install Hotjar or Microsoft Clarity and then see how people are interacting with that call to action. If no one's clicking on it, then chances are you probably need to change the messaging on that so it's more relevant to what the consumer's expecting.
You know what's interesting? In the notes you had an example to share, and we were talking about with this particular client, not mentioning the client. But you know the funny thing is I can say this and no one will know the client or the industry.
That's so true.
That's how generic it is. And it was save the world. Like no one knows what industry, forget company. No one even knows what industry we're talking about, save the world. But that's an example of a bad one.
As I hear that from you, Mobes, I think, okay, I'm making a donation.
Yeah.
Which is totally not what this client does.
It's not what this client does. So yeah, absolutely. So relevancy, I think you make a good point around, okay, what are they going to expect on the homepage? That's going to be more value prop, pain point driven. Are you looking for this, right?
Yeah.
Story brand stuff. And keep that thought. It's going to be different for different pages. So if you're coming from Google Ads or Facebook, if you're going on a service page, what are they expecting to see based on where they're coming from?
Yeah, I think relevance is also all about intent. And you really have to think about like what's the intent behind that page for the consumer's point of view. So I was having a conversation with a client recently and on their homepage, I know we're spending a lot of time on the homepage, but on their homepage, they had a call to action button quite high up that sent people to the blog part of their website. Now, typically for a homepage, people are typing in product or service keywords to get to that homepage. So the next best step is typically something to help them on their journey with getting to a services or product page. That's what you want to do, at least higher up on a homepage. With blogs and how people typically navigate to blogs or find themselves on a blog is they type in a long tail keyword in the search engine.
Then it comes up in Google.
Yeah, so it's not the natural path. So this is all about trying to really put yourself in the consumer's mindset and think, what is their intent? And then shape your website around that. All right, next?
Yeah.
All right. So our next point is clarity. So how clear is the value proposition communicated? And something that we often refer to here is the design and then also the content. So from a design point of view, is there like uninterrupted eye flow? So is it easy on the eye? Is it skimmable? And then also the content. So making sure that you have different types of content available for different types of consumers that, might prefer a video over text. Is there images to supplement that text?
Right.
No one likes a big block of text on a page. You want to be able to skim through that and consume it in different ways.
Skimmable, isn't it? So this is about all of those things, having skimmable media. But I guess this has a lot to do with UX, isn't it? A lot. This one is a very, very subjective, so probably harder one to give examples on. But like to your point, and we'll probably mention this once more before we end the show, but if you have something like firstly, it should look, have that uninterrupted eye flow. Have a mix of images and text, not overloading the text. That's probably some practical stuff we could give. But I think the other half of that coin is, I was just about to say, having Hotjar, right? Having Hotjar Clarity Flow. And by the way, real quickly, and the reason for that is so then you can actually see the user journey, you can see the recordings, you can see where you're losing them. But really quickly, my question to you, Linda, was like, which one do you recommend? Because you've had experience with both. And honestly, gun to head, which one would you recommend and why? Hotjar versus Clarity Flow.
Well, Hotjar causes a lot of bloat on a website. So it actually slows down the website quite a bit. Whereas Microsoft Clarity doesn't do that so much.
But Clarity doesn't have some features.
But Clarity's features are worse.
Yeah.
So what I would recommend is Hotjar, but just for a shorter period of time. Make sure you don't just install it and leave it on there for ages and not look at it. Like have a purpose behind it and then take it off when you're not using it. And then when you want to re-engage it again.
That sounds solid.
Yeah. That's what I would recommend.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So next one we have is, so we've spoken about clarity. Now we talk about things that take away from the value proposition.
Yeah, these are like downward forces on the airplane. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So we've got anxiety and distraction. So distraction is anything that obviously distracts people from taking the action we want them to take. So this is what you were saying earlier about like the pop-ups when they don't make sense.
Yeah, this is why, in essence, why landing pages work, right, Linda? When you think about it, because distraction, the whole purpose and premise, and this is not a new thing. Half our listeners, may have heard this before, but a landing page just has one thing, one call to action, one value prop, probably for one persona or one segment, and it removes everything else. But you can take those elements into every other page as well, of course.
Yeah, that's so true. There's something that you always say, Mobes, which I was just thinking about, where people don't judge you on the sum, they judge you on the average.
Yes, it's a sales and marketing principle. They do not judge you on the sum of the value you're presenting. They judge you on the average. So what that means is you would think that, okay, if I share 5 really awesome things, 2 okay things they don't mind, one thing they don't give a damn about, that's more powerful than just 2 or 3 things they care about and nothing else. That's not true. It's just not true. You're far better off sharing 1, 2, or 3 key things they care about than 5 things they care about, but by diluted with it, just a bunch of crap that they don't. It just dilutes your offerings.
So true. Yeah. And people always want to stuff as much messaging as they can, but it clearly does the opposite effect. So
yeah, 100%.
Okay. And then the last one is anxiety.
This is an overlooked one. Yeah.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? So anything that brings hesitancy or concern to the users, which people don't often think about. What's creating anxiety on the website right now?
It's funny. I think, obviously they don't do it on purpose or they don't think about it. I think what they don't realize is the impact it has on conversions.
Yeah.
That's what they don't realize. Like, for example, a pop-up with an X that doesn't work. Yeah, cool. We should fix it. Yeah, like, oh, I noticed that doesn't work. Let's get it fixed. They don't realize like how much of a downward force on conversion it is.
So true.
And if you're listening to this, think about when you're on a site and little things like, a form is broken, or, the other thing too, the other reason why I recommend actually, if you focus on content, like we focus on content a lot, sure, have that on your homepage. But if you're a business that doesn't do content a lot and you're going to have old dates there, like 2020, don't do that. Yeah, you can remove the dates, I guess, but that just gives anxiety like no one's home. But I think you've got some really, really good examples as well. But I think the point I want to make is they don't realize the impact on performance and conversions.
Yeah. I mean, your website is designed to build trust with your consumer. That's the primary thing that it needs to do. And so when you have a poor user experience, like it could be as simple as broken links on your website.
100%. That's a big one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything that is meant to function a certain way and doesn't, like it does create anxiety for the user. It hinders their experience. It doesn't make them feel more positive about you in the end of the day.
Yeah. And it could be a subtle thing, a subconscious thing, but I love that example because it happens so often. But having a broken link on a page is the equivalent of having a little bit of tomato sauce on your t-shirt talking to a client.
Yeah.
Right? Especially like first time you meet them. And often that's where the interaction is most on your website when they haven't had a relationship with you. It's like, like Linda was really good, but she had a bit of tomato sauce on her shoulder. I wonder what else she's sloppy on. Like, To be honest, it's probably me going to be the sloppy one than you. But that's the point. Like it takes a little bit of confidence away.
Yeah, that's so true. And it might be okay here and there, but when you're looking at all these factors, they add up. They 100%. Absolutely add up. I think as well, it can feel probably quite overwhelming, like hearing all these things. What I would say is probably find one or pick one and then audit your website on that one thing, whether it's urgency.
I was going to say on that note, and maybe we can end on this, Linda, like, so that's really, really good. I think that's so useful for everyone. Where would you recommend people start? Right? You haven't done this before. Obviously, like you've done it. Like if you're listening, you haven't done this before. Where do you think they should start if they're just coming to terms with this new framework? They haven't done Hotjar or anything like that before. Would you start on the homepage, your service page? What would be your kind of elevator pitch to them?
I would start definitely on your high touch pages and work your way backwards from there. So the pages
like
that
not
impact,
at once.
No, whatever impacts the customer journey the most, I would start there.
Service page.
Yeah, service pages, homepage. And if you're not certain what that looks like, although typically it would be those pages, then you can just go into analytics, have a look at what pages have the most sessions and work your way down that list. But yeah, I would start with your high touch pages first because you're going to get like the lowest hanging fruit, if you will. So you're going to get the most value out of updating those pages. In regards to where you start as well, For me personally, Mobes, I don't know what you think, but I definitely look at the relevance of the messaging and I start there.
Right.
Always. So how quickly can we connect with the person? How quickly can we speak to their problems and then show that we can guide them towards a solution as opposed to fixing all the little technical bits and pieces?
Yeah, I think part of relevance is also people overestimate the messaging in body copy. You mentioned skimmable before.
Yeah.
So if you've got something really key, sometimes we'll look at pages and there'll be like a really nice juicy line sitting in a paragraph where it's like even the client doesn't remember what's on it. How do you expect, your consumers, like our clients don't remember. How do they expect their consumers to remember? They're just not.
So true.
So yeah, you're right. Like relevancy and then like looking at the body copy, how do you make it more skimmable? And then of course, we highly, highly recommend putting in Hotjar for a month or two.
Yep.
Get some data and go from there.
Yeah. It depends how much data your website has. Obviously, if you don't have a lot of users on your website, then it might take quite a few months to be able to populate enough data to then make decisions off that. If you've got thousands of website visitors every single month, then you can probably look at the data a little bit quicker and make quicker decisions. But yeah.
100%. Awesome, Linda. It was an amazing show.
Likewise.
And we'll join everyone again for another episode of Inbound Buzz.
See you guys.
Thanks for listening to Inbound Buzz. Learn anything? Return the favor by spreading the word. Want to make your mark in digital? Need help with your digital strategy, inbound, and marketing automation efforts? Then visit redpandas.com.au and be sure to tune in next time for another Inbound Buzz hit.